Welcome. In today's video, we'll be treating how to prevent color fading in exterior paint. One of the challenges that faces paints that is meant for exterior use is color fading, or what we call color shift. You notice when you paint, use the same brand of paint to paint the inside of a building, and that same brand in painting the exterior of that building, you see that one fades faster than the other. The one for the interior will last longer definitely than the one that is actually for the exterior use, or that is used on the outside of the building, because of what we call UV degradation. It happens that there's always the activity of UV light on the paint, and the component of the paint that leads to the degradation of that paint, and also that leads to definitely color shift, that leads to color shift. Now, that is exactly what we'll be treating in this video. Now, if you are just joining me for the very first time, or you are just seeing my video for the very first time, I am Dazwat, a light chemical expert, a formulator, and a paint producer. So I actually want to welcome you to the family. You are highly welcome. So that is exactly what we are going to be talking about in this video: how to prevent, or how to ensure that your product or your paint is actually formulated in a way that it will handle the UV ray activity, so that you have a better color or light fastness of your paint, for it to be able to contend favorably with UV light. So UV ray or UV light is actually the ray or the wavelength of the sun that attacks a specific spectrum of color. It affects a specific spectrum of color. Some colors are actually not really bothered or affected because of the wavelength of the UV light that is actually hitting them. They can be able to survive at the range of that UV light that is actually hitting them. So I think from between 200 and 400 nanometer wavelength, that hits a certain color, that will actually impact on that color, whether it's going to shift the color or degrade the color. There are some certain things that actually happen within that process that allows for that. When the UV light hits the substrate that is actually painted, it is actually generated that can lead to degradation of the chemicals that is used in that paint, and definitely there's going to be a color shift. So some of the things that we can do in order to prevent this from happening, or for us to be able to slow down the activity of the UV light or the UV ray, is what we'll be discussing today in this particular video. It's not like the so such cannot not actually be prevented, or it can actually definitely be prevented if we have the adequate knowledge, and we have the know-how of how to prevent this from happening. And exactly what this video is going to be doing, in equipping us with the right information for us to be able to overcome these challenges that faces paint or colors that is meant for exterior substrate. And one thing I'm actually certain of is the fact that you're going to be able to hold on onto one or two things that will improve your paint's quality, especially in the area of having to improve the color or light fastness of your paint. So I've actually listed some of the things that we'll be considering, or some of the factors that we need to consider in this class in order for us to prevent or to slow down the activity of UV ray. So when we put all of this thing into consideration when formulating our paint, can help slow down the activity of UV ray. Just like I explained, UV ray is actually or UV light is actually the rays from the sun, which is not visible to the naked eye. But when you check it through a prism, you can actually begin to see the spectrum of light, all of the no the spectrum of light. I think one of the one of the depiction of the spectrum of light that is actually emitted from the sunlight is the rainbow. The rainbow is actually formed because water droplets, light from the sun hits a water droplet in the sky, and then the color of that light is actually reflected. So the what we can actually see is the white light. The white light that is actually coming to us is what we can see with our naked eyes. But when you bring special equipment, we will be able to diffuse or reflect all of those spectrum. But that is not our concern. Our concern is how to prevent this UV light or UV ray from degrading our paint and causing color fading. And that is exactly what we'll be talking about. The very first consideration to preventing color fading in exterior paint is the binder selection, the type of binder that is actually used in producing the paint. No, you see that no, most companies now separates their products. They now label their product as no weather sheet or something like that because they want to ensure that is able to stand the test of time because of the things that will not be added and some special consideration that will be taken concerning the formulation of that paint. One of the critical factor to be considered when producing a weather shade paint is the binder system. The binder system. So you want to pay critical attention to the binder selection. It is very, very important. And one of the best uh, binder system for weather shade is the pure acrylic. Is the pure acrylic. Pure acrylic is the binder you need to use when producing weather sheet. No, it's actually performs much more better than styrene or vinyl acrylic. It performs much more better than styrene acrylic because it doesn't react with the free radicals. The chain, the molecule chain does not really react like that with the free radicals when during oxidation. But I'm not going to be bringing all of those technical jargon in this class. I just want to point us to the right direction when we are actually producing. But one of the most challenging thing is that this pure acrylic is not common in the market, so we are left with styrene acrylic, which we need to have to work with. But then the pure acrylic is available, is very, very much available. It's just that sometimes we don't ask for it. Like Acrona have their their pure acrylic to be under, I think, Acrona X9. So they have it under that range, and I think some other range as well. I think they are XF79 or something like that. So they have their pure acrylic under those range. You can do your product finding. Don't have product knowledge. You can go check for other things about that pure acrylic. Niceil also have. That's Niceil is actually a Nigerian based company. That is why most time I talk about them and their product. I talk about them and their product. They have pure acrylic. I'm very sure of that. So they have pure acrylic. So one of the consideration you want to put in place is your binder selection. Your binder selection, and I point you to pure acrylic. But in a case where you can't get pure acrylic, we have to make do with styrene acrylic. We have to make do with styrene acrylic. Now, some of the styrene acrylic that we are having now have improved UV stabilization. So now producers of these binders are now also factoring in the use of UV absorber in some of those binders also in order to prevent UV degradation of that binder, most especially. Now, why should we pay attention to our binder? Because your binder is actually the first line of defense for your paint and color. The first line of defense that you have is your binder. Why? Because the binder is what will form the film to prevent, first, to prevent the UV light that is hitting the substrate, before getting to other components of the paint, especially your color pigment and titanium dioxide, which are some of the things that makes up the color. So your first line of defense is your binder. That is why we actually put it at number one factor that you need to pay attention to in preventing UV degradation of your color. So one thing is that even in recent time we are now trying to like optimize. No, I just like I said, the producers are actually trying to optimize their product in order to be able to accommodate, or to be able to be strengthened against UV activities. Now some of those binder can now handle as UV spectrum from between 200 and 400 nanometer now, so it prevents color degradation. So you want to use a very high quality binder. If you can get pure acrylic, fine, but if you cannot get pure acrylic, you are using styrene acrylic. But those styrene acrylic do react with the radicals in the substrate. So the next thing you want to pay attention to, because we are not going to be making this video very long, it's going to be very short, unlike some of our other videos, because this topic itself is actually a lengthy topic. It's a course on its own, because I think I will be doing a series on this. So I want some of the videos that I'll be doing on it to be very concise, so that we'll move like that in order to take care of this issue. The next thing we'll be talking about is pigment choice. Your pigment choice will determine whether your paint will stand the test of time. The color of your paint will stand the test of time, or it will fade in no time. So when producing is actually a common knowledge that when producing paint for exterior use, you want to go for inorganic pigments. You want to go for inorganic pigments. What are inorganic pigments? They are pigments that can actually that is actually not produced from organic matter, so they can withstand UV degradation better than organic pigment. So in that corridor, or under that specification of inorganic pigment, you have titan, you have iron oxide. Your iron oxide include all of your oxide, yellow oxide, red oxide, carbon black, which carbon black, some other call it black oxide. Though there's black oxide, there's carbon black. So all of those ones fall under inorganic pigments, including zinc oxide, and including mixed metal. All of those things fall under inorganic pigment. So they can handle UV light well. They have a high tolerance for UV light. So when you use oxide like that, iron oxide like that in your paint production, you notice that they don't fade faster like when you use organic pigments. When you're using organic pigment, they don't fade faster than when you organic pigment. Now, on the side of organic pigments, there are some organic pigments that have better light fastness. What we mean by light fastness, or light fast, or they are light fast, is the fact that they can still withstand UV activity to some extent, just like the spectrum I mentioned, which is between 200 nanometer and 400 nanometer. They can still very much accommodate that. And some of the example of that is quinacridone is one organic pigments that can still handle. They can still handle very well. They can handle UV light. And also the second one is that tylocyanide. Tylocyanide also can actually handle UV light much more better. You probably might now begin to wonder some of these thing. I don't know them. You need to go and do research on them, and for you to be much more aware. This, you know, they come sometimes. They come in paste. So, you know, blue paste and red. So they perform much more better than just your normal. We call them hazel. We call them hazel. Hazel. So those ones, you know, if you use them in your production, they just fade almost in no time. But then these two can still really handle UV light than the Hazel. We have further range. That is why I said I will actually be talking about all of that in full detail in some other video. So you want to pay attention to that. So you don't want to use organic pigments like red, yellow, blue. No, just avoid them because they will fade in no time. So you want to pay much more attention to inorganic pigments for exterior or external use. So from that, we'll move away and we'll move on to the selection of your titan, which is a primary pigment. Titan quality. The quality of your titan will also dictate if your paint will actually fade faster or not. No, there are so many titans out there. They just call it titan. Just like we all know, we have, you know, at least three different types of titan, but two of it is commercially available. Which one is Anatis, and the other one is Rotal titan. Anatis is actually the lower end of titan that is commercially available, while the Rotal is, you know, much more better and fits for uh, production, both for interior and exterior use. So, but then the Anatis can only be used for you know, indoor paints use. The paint that actually want to be used for interior use. They want to be for interior use. But then Router can actually handle both interior and exterior you know, paint formulation. So, but then with that also, you still want to have additional knowledge about the kind of titan you're actually using. Even though it's actually a rutile type of titan, you want to know if they are coated. If they are coated, they have two things they use in coating titanium dioxide that can actually withstand UV ray. When you want to know that, you should go for the technical data sheet of the product you want to buy. It is actually listed there whether it is coated or not. The ones that you want to begin to look out for are the ones that are actually coated with alumina or silica. They are either alumina coated or silica coated. All of those ones will help, you know, in preventing color shift. It will prevent color shift. So I, just like I said, I don't want to take long on this video. I don't want this video to be too elongated. So we'll move on to the next thing that you can usually add in your paint to prevent color fading and improve color fastness. The next one you want to go at now, the most professional chemical added in paint production to prevent color fading is the UV absorber. It's called the UV absorber, or we call it UV. No, there's UV absorber, and we have what is called halls. UV absorber, what it does is that when the light from the sun hits the surface of the paint, it absorbs it and reflects it back as heat before it gets to the binder. Before it gets to the binder or the polymer of the binder, it reflects it back as light, thus preventing the paint film and the color itself, and then the substrate as a resultant effect of having to stabilize the paint on it. So that is what that does. It absorbs it, then reflects it back as heat. Now the other one is called Halls. It's spelled Hals, Halls, which is Inter-Amine Light Stabilizer. Inter-Amine Light Stabilizer. What that does, it doesn't have, it allows, it doesn't absorb the UV, but it ensure that when the UV light hits the paint and free radicals are formed, this ensures that it performs the function of having to mop them up. It mops up the oxidation, the free radicals caused by oxidation and photodegradation. So it mops it up and ensure they did not degrade the polymer and they don't touch the color. So by so doing, it prevents the color and stops the color shift. So the next one we want to consider in this video is your pigments. Your pigment volume concentration. Your pigment volume concentration, we call it the CPVC. I've been actually talking about this for a while now, the CPVC, which is critical pigment volume concentration. Critical pigment volume concentration. What that means is the ratio of your pigment to the ratio of your binder. If the binder if the pigment overcomes the binder, that means there won't be enough binder to hold the particle of the pigment. The implication of that is that uh, the film of the paint will be porous. The film of the paint will be porous, thus allowing the ingress of water and oxygen that will eventually cause degradation of the film. It will cause degradation of the film and subsequently cause color fading or color shift. So you want to ensure that your pigment does not exceed the critical pigment volume concentration. You want to ensure that you keep it down, you keep it low, below the critical pigment concentration. What that means, the implication of that, having to leave the technicality of it, is the fact that you should ensure that your filler you use in your production does not exceed this time, I'm sorry, does not exceed the binder, the ratio of your binder. There must be enough binder to hold the particle pigment. Imagine someone having to use 15 kg of filler, maybe calcium carbonate, and then it uses 1 kg of binder. 1 kg of binder, or some pressing can even go as low as 0.8. I mean to say, so because they try to cut cost, or because they think they are mass producing, and then they can actually do the gimmicks of having to reduce chemical, and the bulk production will make up for the shortfall. So you want to ensure that your pigment volume concentration is actually below the CPVC. That's the critical pigment volume concentration. So at that point, it's actually indicating that your pigment is actually far much more than your binder. That's what it means. So we want to move on to the next one that you need to pay critical attention to in order to prevent color fading, is your coalescence agent or coalescence agent. You call it the coalescence agent, or whatever you want to call it, which includes rather Texanol, butylglycol, butylglycol. The things that actually falls under the coalescent agent. There are other coalescent agents, but it will not really matter in this class. So you want to ensure you had enough of that one for proper film formation. You remember that the first line of defense for your paint color is the film. It's actually the binder. So when the film is properly formed, you can ensure that the UV light will have to battle with the paint film before it gets to the color and degrade it. So it will take time because the film is actually properly formed. So that is actually that about that. So you want to pay close attention to that. We'll move on to the next word that you need to use, what you need to use in your paint to salvage or to prevent color degradation. You want to use good antifungal. You want to use good antifungal and biocide in that paint. One of the things that call color fading or color shift or color degradation is the activities of fungi on that paint, because it's actually used is used on an exterior substrate. So there's the likelihood that there's going to be biodegradation, which involve fungi. So they begin to act on that film because they want to feed. They begin to feed on the paint film. They begin to feed on the pigment, and eventually they are going to destroy the film. So and there's going to be color shift. So another thing you can actually include in your paints is called zinc oxide, in order to prevent color degradation or fading. Is zinc oxide. But one good thing about this is that it can serve dual purpose. It can serve as biocide. It can serve as biocide and can still prevent UV light. You can still prevent UV degradation of your paint. But then you have to be very, very cautious with, the use of zinc oxide, because it can be a two-edged sword. Also, it can cut both sides. It can also release what we call the free radical. But then if you use it minimally, rather, if you use it minimally, from between 2% to 5% of the total production. But I usually advise you use at 2% rate, so that you'll be able to balance its effect. So we are going to be stopping here today, and see you in our next video.